Last night, while you slept, another version of you made a different choice. Maybe they sent that message you deleted. Maybe they never met the person who shaped your life. And while you woke up here, they woke up there, in a world that feels just as real. But isn't this one? This isn't a science fiction setup. It's a growing scientific suspicion. For decades, physicists treated the idea of parallel realities as an elegant mathematical trick, a way to keep quantum equations consistent. But now, experiments are forcing us to ask a dangerous question. What if it's literally true? What if every decision, every measurement, every quantum collapse doesn't destroy possibilities? It just splits them. You're not a single line through time. You're a branching structure. Billions of you, exploring billions of outcomes, all coexisting right now. The universe in this view doesn't choose one version of reality. It keeps them all. And the strangest part? We might have already found hints that these other realities occasionally bleed into ours. Microscopic interference patterns that shouldn't exist. Quantum correlations that persist even when particles are separated by vast distances. It's as if reality itself refuses to stay in one piece. If that's true, then identity, the simple sense of you, might be the biggest illusion of all. Because if other versions of you are living out every possible path, what does it even mean to say this is the real one? The idea starts with something so small it almost feels like a trick. A single electron. When physicists send one through a double-slit experiment, it behaves like a wave, spreading out, interfering with itself, landing on the detector as if it passed through both slits at once. But the moment we observe which slit it takes, the interference vanishes. The electron acts like it chose just one path, as if our attention, our measurement, forced the universe to decide. For years, that collapse was treated as fundamental. Reality, we thought, chooses one version when watched. But then came Hugh Everett in 1957, a quiet, relentless thinker who proposed something heretical. What if the wave function never collapses at all? What if every possibility happens just in separate, non-interacting branches? In Everett's view, when the electron goes left and right, the universe itself splits. One copy contains the left outcome, another the right. No collapse, just endless branching. And because observers are part of the experiment, you split too. The you who saw it go left and the you who saw it go right are both real, each in their own world, neither aware of the other. At first it sounded absurd. Too many universes, too much redundancy. But the math worked. And over time, what began as a radical hypothesis started to look like the cleanest way to describe quantum reality, one that removes the mysterious collapse entirely. Recent research has made it even harder to dismiss. Simulations run on quantum computers like those from Google and IBM are starting to model quantum systems where multiple states coexist and evolve simultaneously, exactly as Everett predicted. Even more intriguing are new experiments testing superposition of observers, situations where it's not only particles, but entire measurement devices that exist in multiple states until compared. If that holds, then the boundary between microscopic and macroscopic reality simply disappears. In that case, you are not merely watching quantum weirdness. You are a quantum process, entangled with every possible version of yourself. Each decision, every random event doesn't eliminate possibilities. It multiplies them. But here's the unnerving twist. If every outcome exists, why do we experience only one? Why does consciousness feel localized to this narrow slice of the multiverse, as if someone tuned our awareness to a single frequency while all others hum silently around us? That's where the real mystery begins, and it might force us to rethink what observation even means. When I touch this table, it feels solid, fixed, singular. But that sense of solidity is a story, one that the brain tells to keep us sane inside a sea of probabilities. Zoom in far enough, and what you find isn't matter at all. It's patterns of energy, vibrating fields, quantum states that never truly settle until something interacts with them. And even then, interaction doesn't collapse the world into one version. It just makes us part of the entanglement. Our minds evolved to simplify the chaos. We experience one smooth timeline because consciousness stitches together the version of events that fits best. It edits out contradictions, it hides interference, it filters out signals from the versions that didn't win our attention. But that's just perception, not proof. Some physicists now suspect that our subjective continuity, that sense of moving through one consistent world, is a kind of quantum bias, a survival trick. Consciousness may not choose a branch. It may simply follow one that remains self-consistent. The others don't vanish. They keep existing, just beyond our cognitive horizon. And occasionally something slips. There are stories, not scientific proof, but curious anomalies, where people describe small, inexplicable shifts, objects out of place, memories that don't align, events that others swear happened differently. We usually call it false memory. But could it be something deeper? A side effect of quantum-level branching where the boundaries between versions briefly blur? It sounds fantastical, until you remember, superposition and interference are not theories. They're measurable, repeatable, real. If particles can exist in overlapping states until observation, why not complex systems like us? After all, every atom in your body obeys the same quantum rules. Imagine you standing at a crossroads, not metaphorically, but physically. One path leads you to answer a call, another to ignore it. From the quantum point of view, both paths unfold. The difference is just that your awareness, this thin thread of now, aligns with one outcome. You experience one narrative while countless others proceed without you, just as vivid, just as real. That means reality might not be a solid wall we live inside. It's a shimmering interference pattern, billions of overlapping worlds, coexisting, diverging, recombining. We think we're walking a straight line through time. In truth, we might be surfing an infinite quantum wave, and yet one question refuses to go away. If all these parallel versions are real, could we ever prove it? Because if we can, then the story of reality itself might be rewritten forever. It starts quietly, like a series of accidents in the data, little contradictions that refuse to disappear. When you line them up, they form a pattern, one that whispers something extraordinary. Maybe parallel realities aren't just theoretical. Maybe they're leaving fingerprints. The first rung on that ladder takes us back to the double-slit experiment. Not the simple classroom version, but the modern, ultra-sensitive iterations. In 2019, researchers used electrons, even large molecules, and still saw interference patterns, suggesting that entire systems can exist in overlapping quantum states. The more complex the object, the more disturbing the implication. If molecules can do this, so could neurons, or brains. The second rung appears with a strange kind of experiment known as delayed choice quantum erasure. Here, the decision to observe, to collapse the wave, is made after the particle has already passed through the slits. And yet, the results change retroactively, as if the universe rewrites its own history to stay consistent with the measurement. If time itself can be influenced backward, then one timeline starts to lose meaning. You begin to suspect that multiple timelines may already be woven together. The third rung comes from quantum computing. Machines like Google's Sycamore or IBM's Eagle don't just calculate, they evolve vast webs of simultaneous states. A quantum bit isn't 0 or 1, it's both until measurement. When these machines outperform classical supercomputers, it's as if they're drawing computational power from parallel branches, performing countless operations at once, then merging the outcomes. If those branches were merely math, they'd have no effect. But they do. We measure it. And then comes the fourth rung, the most speculative, yet the hardest to ignore. In 2022, a team of Australian researchers proposed that interference patterns might not only arise within one universe, but between nearby realities. They call it the Many Interacting Worlds framework. In it, quantum effects come from subtle repulsions between neighboring universes, tiny pushes and pulls that we can, in principle, detect. If true, this means that the boundaries between realities aren't absolute. They leak. They resonate. We might already be feeling the echoes of worlds brushing against our own. Taken together, these four clues form a disturbing picture. The multiverse isn't out there, somewhere beyond reach. It's here, intertwined with every decision, every atom, every moment of your life. Your existence might be less like a single line, and more like a chord, vibrating across multiple realities in harmony. But if that's true, if the universe is already full of versions of you, then a question begins to burn through the silence. Could those other versions ever notice each other? And if they could, what happens when they do? If parallel realities are real, then every choice you've ever made, and every one you didn't, still exists, unfolding somewhere. That's not just poetic, it's horrifying and liberating, because it means you are not a single consciousness trapped in one fate. You're a constellation, scattered across infinite worlds, each version living the consequence of a slightly different decision. Think about what that does to guilt, to regret, to pride. If in another world you failed, but here you succeeded, are either versions more real? And what about morality? If every possibility is actualized, then both the hero and the villain exist, equally vivid, equally valid. The line between good and bad, success and failure becomes something softer, almost quantum itself, contextual, relative, branching. Some philosophers argue this makes free will meaningless. If everything that can happen does happen, then your sense of choice is an illusion, a local experience of one timeline inside a cosmic network of inevitability. But others flip that idea entirely. They claim the multiverse doesn't erase free will, it maximizes it. Because in the grand structure of all realities, every potential of your consciousness is explored. You don't lose agency, you expand it to infinity. Here's where it gets even stranger. If all versions of you share the same origin, the same quantum wave function, then on some level they're still connected, entangled. And if consciousness itself is quantum, as researchers like Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff propose, then your mind might be the ultimate entanglement hub, a node resonating across countless dimensions of self. You wouldn't just exist in many worlds. You'd be aware of them, faintly, like remembering a dream you never lived. Ever feel déjà vu that makes no rational sense? Moments where you know what someone's about to say or sense a shift in atmosphere for no reason? We call them intuition, coincidence, glitch. But what if they're bleed-through, fragments from other versions of you whispering across quantum boundaries? You wouldn't consciously detect it. The signal would be too subtle. But maybe, deep in the architecture of your neurons, something resonates when your paths align, when two versions of you brush past one another in the cosmic fog. It's a seductive thought, but also a dangerous one, because if that's true, then consciousness might not just observe the multiverse, it might shape it. And if human awareness really does have that kind of reach, then what we call reality might be less a fixed place and more a collective act of creation. But how far could that go? Could science ever test the link between consciousness and branching realities? And if so, what would happen to the limits of human power? The frontier is shifting faster than anyone expected. For decades, parallel realities lived in the realm of interpretation. Fascinating, but untouchable. Now, the tools to probe them are being built. Not in sci-fi labs, but in our own universities, in the circuitry of machines no bigger than your hand. Quantum computing is the obvious start. Every new generation, from Google's Sycamore to IBM's Condor, expands the ability to sustain coherent superpositions. Each qubit doesn't just hold data, it holds possibilities. When we scale that up, we're effectively creating controlled microscopic multiverses, tiny pockets where countless versions of a system evolve in parallel. The moment we read the result, they collapse into one outcome. But before that, they're real, or at least as real as any other quantum state. It's not hard to imagine the next step, not just computing with parallel realities, but communicating across them. Already, some researchers are exploring post-selection techniques, using interference between possible outcomes to steer a system toward a chosen result. It's as if they're learning to nudge the probabilities themselves, shaping which reality becomes the one we observe. Today, it's about data. Tomorrow, who knows? Neuroscientists are starting to join the conversation. They're asking whether the brain's microtubules, those microscopic structures Penrose once called quantum switches, could maintain coherence long enough to link our cognition to deeper layers of the quantum field. If so, human thought might not just reflect reality, it might interfere with it. Imagine training a machine learning model not only on data from one world, but on subtle correlations from many, a quantum AI tuned to the multiverse itself. Such a system could, in theory, predict outcomes across realities, finding patterns invisible to classical logic. But there's a darker possibility. If we ever learn to manipulate branching at will, to collapse certain versions and favor others, we'll be choosing which universes get to continue. Every technological leap will come with a moral shadow. Countless possible worlds snuffed out for the sake of efficiency, profit, or survival. Who gets to decide which version of reality becomes real enough to keep? We stand at the edge of that power now. Quantum sensors are approaching the sensitivity to detect phase shifts that could hint at other universes brushing against ours. AI models are already being trained to recognize interference signatures too faint for human analysis. Some scientists whisper about experiments where outcomes fluctuate in ways that defy randomness, as if something unseen is correcting them. And the more we look, the more we feel watched back, not by gods or ghosts, but by the endless network of ourselves, staring through the fabric, asking the same question. If we're truly surrounded by our own infinite reflections, what happens the moment one of them looks directly at us? If there are infinite versions of you, then the question isn't which one is real. It's which one you decide to become aware of. That's the quiet revolution hidden in this idea. Not just the science, but the perspective. Because if reality is a field of branching possibilities, then every moment of awareness is an act of selection. You're not watching your life unfold, you're constantly tuning it, like a frequency that determines which version of existence becomes your experience. Think about that. Every decision you make, from the words you speak to the thoughts you allow, could act like a quantum filter, aligning you with a particular strand of the multiverse. If you dwell on fear, maybe you drift toward the world where fear wins. If you focus on courage, maybe your awareness anchors in the version where courage reshapes the outcome. The theory doesn't promise control, it promises responsibility. Because the universe, it seems, is listening to the subtleties of your intent. In that light, your mistakes aren't failures, they're coordinates. Every version of you that ever stumbled still exists somewhere, still learning, still evolving. And when you forgive yourself, perhaps what you're really doing is sending coherence across branches, synchronizing your many selves toward healing. That's not mysticism. It's the physics of unity applied to consciousness. Relationships change, too. The people you love might not just exist in your world. They might exist across countless ones. In some, you never met. In others, you never lost touch. But the emotion that connects you here could ripple outward, entangling with versions of them in other worlds. Subtle harmonies between infinite stories of affection and loss. When you feel someone's presence even when they're gone, could that be quantum empathy? Resonance between parallel hearts? It's impossible to prove, but strangely comforting to imagine. Living with this awareness doesn't make life smaller. It makes it vast. Suddenly, your choices matter more, not less, because they're the brushstrokes painting your reality out of endless potential. The you watching this isn't the only one that exists, but you are the one experiencing this timeline, this moment, this version of truth. You have the privilege and the burden of steering your frequency. Maybe that's what consciousness really is, a universal act of attention, collapsing infinity into a single lived story. And maybe meaning isn't something we find, but something we select, one heartbeat at a time. But there's still one mystery left unanswered, one that science and philosophy are both circling in silence. If we can choose which reality we align with, who or what is doing the choosing? Maybe we've been looking at the multiverse from the wrong direction. We imagine it as something out there, endless, unreachable, abstract. But maybe it's closer than our own thoughts. Maybe the multiverse isn't a collection of separate worlds. It's a mirror made of choice, and we are its reflection. When you open your eyes in the morning, you aren't waking up in reality. You're creating one. Every breath, every observation, every act of awareness selects which version of existence comes into focus. That doesn't make you a god. It makes you a participant in the most intricate experiment ever conducted, consciousness interacting with the quantum field. Somewhere, another you is watching a different sunrise. Another you made peace with someone you never could hear. Another is still lost, still searching, and yet, across all of them, something constant remains. A kind of resonance, a pattern that transcends the branches. Maybe that's what we call the soul, the information that echoes through infinite versions of self, learning through variation what it means to exist. You'll never meet those other versions, not in any conventional sense, but you can feel them, in the quiet sense that life could always have gone another way, in the strange comfort that maybe somewhere it did. That awareness doesn't have to paralyze you. It can free you. Because if infinite worlds are possible, then meaning isn't given, it's chosen. So tonight, when you look at the sky, imagine countless stars not as distant suns, but as reflections of the same cosmic experiment. Every light a world, every world a version of you, each searching for the same truth in different ways. Do you believe this quantum idea changes everything, or is it just science fiction? Tell me below. Your view might change someone's mind.